So I just got done binge watching all of the Christopher Reeves Superman films with this 4K box set from Warner Brothers, and I'm ready, so ready to give my thoughts on this franchise. I hope you guys are too. Let's do it. Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to the Mid-Level Media channel, your hub for everything physical media and entertainment. I am Ken, and today guys, we're here to review and talk about, I'm very excited guys, to review and talk about the Superman 4K collector set. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. I bet everybody's clicked off the video by now. 1978 through 1987, the 5-film collection. Of course, they are counting Superman 2, the theatrical cut, and the Richard Donner cut as 2 films. A lot of people really wanted, the Superman Returns movie in this set. It is not. You just have the Christopher Reeves Superman films. In this video, guys, look, I'm going to be all over the place. I don't have too many notes because I just got done binge watching all these movies over the past couple of days. So I've got Superman swirling everywhere in the brain right now. 600 minutes of Superman. So we're going to talk about the movies themselves, just my thoughts, my general thoughts on the franchise. You know, what's my favorite, what's my least favorite, stuff like that. Then we're going to get into the actual like 4K restorations and the transfers, because Superman the movie actually already had a 4K transfer. It had one back in 2018. So this is not a new transfer. This is the same transfer that they did back in 2018. But Superman 2 through Superman 4, all new transfers that never before have those been on 4K before. So then we're going to talk about the sound. We're going to talk about special features and packaging and all that good stuff. Just kind of a overview of this entire Superman collector set. Is it worth picking up? This did come out from Warner Brothers. Actually, today is the release date of Superman the 5-film collector set. Now, I was lucky enough to get it in early from Warner Brothers to review and talk about it with you guys. So like I said, I've been binge watching these movies all weekend. And again, ready here to give my thoughts on the movie. So let's get into it. Look, let's talk about the franchise as a whole, my general thoughts on the franchise, just my experience with this franchise. I'll say this, it reminds me a lot, and again, I grew up watching the Batman movies. I grew up watching the Batman movies, the Tim Burton movies, the Joel Schumacher movies. There's a clear divide of quality between a set of 2 movies in that franchise and another set of 2 movies in that franchise. Namely, the Burton films are better than the Schumacher films, right? And it's very similar with Superman, because you have Superman the movie and you have Superman 2. And again, there's some controversy with Superman 2 that we'll get into with Richard Lester coming in to take over for Richard Donner and that whole thing. So there was controversy with there. The cracks were already starting to show by the time we got to Superman 2. But it is very similar, because a lot of people would say that Batman Returns is not as good as Batman 1989. I would disagree. I like them both pretty much equally. But then once you get to Batman Forever, Batman and Robin, it's just an objectively like terrible movie that everybody makes fun of. And I feel like most people make fun of Batman and Robin in the same way that they make fun of Quest for Peace. And then Superman 3 is kind of like the Batman Forever, which some people like it, some people can appreciate it, but most people will admit it's not the best movie, right? So it's very similar to me growing up with the Batman movies, going back and kind of revisiting that and just kind of feeling that same feeling all over again, watching these movies for the first time. So, but I do think that there's a little bit of a difference, because I don't think that Batman 89, I love the movie, love it. I don't think Batman 89 necessarily holds up or ages the best. Whereas Superman the movie, to me, when I got done watching this, I was like, I just witnessed like just a classic piece of cinematic history. Like, to me, after watching this for the first time, and again, I'd never seen any of these movies before, this is one of the best comic book movies ever made. Like, I fully appreciated this film, and I love the movie Man of Steel. That was pretty much I watched Superman Returns in the theaters, but Man of Steel was the first Superman movie that I watched and loved from start to finish. So absolutely loved that. I said for many years, Henry Cavill was the best Superman. Having never really fully like immersed myself in the Christopher Reeves Superman world, I said that. So I did give Christopher Reeves a fair shake. I'd seen parts of Superman 2 when I was a kid, but I just never really looked at these films I never took them seriously growing up. I just never, to me, like Christopher Reeves was kind of like Adam West's Batman. Like it's nostalgic and it's fun, but it's just not, you can't take him seriously as Batman like you can some of the later Batmans that we would get. And I kind of felt that way about Christopher Reeves, but going back and watching this movie, this is so great. I love this movie from start to finish. I love the beginning, just the origins of Krypton and Marlon Brando as Jor-El. Like, I love Russell Crowe as Jor-El, and I think I'm saying that name right, and Man of Steel, but like Marlon Brando, just something about him. He has such a weight to his performance, like in everything that he does. Like, just having the Godfather there as the father of Superman was just like super captivating and awesome. But I love the whole beginning. I love that they take their time in this movie. It's a 2.5 hour long movie. It's an epic movie. They take their time. They establish the character of Superman. They take you through his life, his teenage years. I actually really like the actor that, I don't know his name off the top of my head, but I really like the actor that played young Superman in the movie. I thought he was great. And then, you know, you finally get to Christopher Reeves. He goes to work at the Daily Planet. You meet Margot Kidder, Lois Lane. And I just thought they had great chemistry with each other in this movie, Christopher Reeves and Lois Lane and Margot Kidder. It's just great together. I loved their dynamic and their, you know, the potential romance was there, but they never fully explored it like they would in the later sequels. But everything about this movie, there's some parts that you could say are a little cheesy. I don't think that Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor, you know, he's definitely kind of hamming it up. He's a little comedic in parts, but you can't fully take him seriously as a villain. I feel like he kind of is a joke, but there's a certain moment in the film where you do take him very seriously. But I don't know, just something about it. I forgave all the little goofy things about it and just kind of appreciated it for the classic piece of cinema that it was. Like, this is the template for every single superhero movie that would come after it. Like, this is such an important movie. Like, if you love superhero movies today, you have to go back and watch this movie, I feel like, to fully appreciate like what we're getting now. Because like this, you go back and watch this and it's like everything about this movie, it just screams like this is the beginning. This is the origin of like an entire new genre of film. So I fully appreciated and loved this film. I gave it like a 5 out of 5 on Letterboxd. I just thought it was perfect. I loved everything about it. I love Christopher Reeves as Superman. The scene in the alleyway where he catches the bullet. Like I love how clumsy and kind of cowardly that he is, that he plays Clark Kent. Like I think that's great. And he just does that kind of shift back and forth between Clark Kent and Superman, Kal-El, just so well. And I just love him so much. I think he's so good in the movie. And that brings us to Superman 2. And where I loved the first Superman movie, I didn't love this one. I really liked it though. I did appreciate it much in the same way that I appreciated the first Superman movie. But this one is definitely where I don't get why people, I feel like a lot of people love this one, like it's their favorite one. And the tone of this, like that's really where it starts to kind of snowball with the tone of this franchise. And that's because of this movie, I feel like, is why you get movies like Superman 3 and Superman 4 Quest for Peace. It really kind of started here. And I get that was kind of Richard Lester bringing in a lot of that comedic tone. Like the original Donner cut doesn't have a lot of that comedic stuff. I really love Terrence Stamp in this as General Zod. Like I think that I definitely find Michael Shannon's General Zod a little bit more menacing, but again, classic General Zod in this movie. I like him. I like his dynamic with his two kind of cronies. The female, the actress that plays his sidekick is awesome. Like I loved her. I actually thought she was a little bit more interesting and menacing than General Zod himself. But Terrence Stamp is really good. You bring back Gene Hackman in this movie as Lex Luthor, who kind of plays more of a bumbling, villainous role in this film, but he's still great because it's Gene Hackman. Lois Lane and Clark Kent really explore their romance in this movie. Like there's a whole sequence with them at Niagara Falls, and that's where she finds out that he's Superman, and then they go to the Fortress of Solitude, which I love that setting. That's an awesome set design right there. But this is where I have a problem with this movie. And I remember watching the diner scene when I was a kid. The diner scene is like a big iconic scene in this movie where Superman's lost his powers. I did not know that he was the one that made the decision to give up his powers just so he could sleep with Lois Lane. That's my problem with this movie, is I just don't buy into that. I don't buy into the fact that Kal-El Superman, after everything that he went through, after all the dangers that he faced in the first Superman movie, after how he grew up, I just could not buy into the fact that he would give up all of his powers for Lois Lane. I just couldn't believe it. It was something that, and he did it so quickly, and he did it without even talking to Lois about it. So I had a big problem with that moment in this movie, and I just didn't buy into it. And then like it's set up as this like big dramatic thing, and then like 15 minutes later, after he gets beat up at the diner, he gets his powers back. He just goes up there and finds the amount of times they find a green crystal in these movies, and that just solves all of their problems, gets a little ridiculous at times. So, but I like this movie overall. I like the fight at the end with General Zod in the city, and then they go to the Fortress of Solitude. It's a classic Superman film. I get it. Like, if this is your favorite Superman film, I get it. It's I feel like it has more like flash to it. There's definitely like more settings in this one, which we'll get into when we talk about the 4K. There's more going on in this film, I feel like, and there's more of that like traditional villain type character with General Zod, whereas Lex Luthor, he's a good villain, but he's no match for Superman at the end of the day. You're not going to get a big fight with him and Superman. He's more the brains of the operation. So you actually get a fight between Superman and General Zod and all of his people in this movie, and it's a great fight scene. And I guess we'll go ahead and talk about, I'll talk about the Donner cut real quick. I'll admit it right now, I didn't watch this in its entirety. I kind of skimmed through to kind of pick out, I read the parts that were different online, and then I kind of skimmed through to watch some of those parts and scenes and just how they played out. And the big thing that this does is, in the beginning of Superman 2, there's a big flashback sequence where they kind of replay the entire first movie. And in this movie, in the original Richard Lester version, they do that whole sequence, but it doesn't really amount to anything. It just plays as a recap. And then they go on to do that like Eiffel Tower sequence with Lois Lane, which is not in the Donner cut of the film. And then Superman gets a bomb, and then he throws it into space, and that's what, releases General Zod and his people. So that happens in the Richard Lester version. In this one, they cut out the whole Paris Eiffel Tower sequence, and the bomb that was thrown into space from the first one is the one that releases General Zod and everybody. So, and then they cut out some of the comedic stuff like the Mount Rushmore sequence and all that. There's several, differences, like Lois Lane finding out he's Superman happens. Like, there's different points in time where that realization starts to creep into her mind, and there's different things in this one that there is in the original second one. So again, didn't watch this in its entirety. I'm not the biggest fan of like alternate cuts. Like, to me, I'll probably never watch this again. I'm just gonna stick with the original. I'm 9 times out of 10, I'm a original theatrical cut kind of guy. I want to watch the film how it was originally intended and how it came out in the theaters when everybody else watched it back in the day. So, I'm kind of weird in that way, I guess. But the Richard Donner cut, it was what it was. I appreciated some of the differences. I think the beginning difference was, pretty good. But also, I like the Eiffel Tower sequence, too. I thought it was a good opening for the movie. So, kind of didn't like how that was cut out. Superman 3. I love Annette O'Toole. I'll say that. I love Annette O'Toole. I like how they did something a little bit different. They played into another romance for Clark Kent. They got rid of Lois Lane. Margot Kidder's not in this movie, but like maybe 5 minutes. And it's him and it's Annette O'Toole in his hometown. I like that setup, but I love Richard Pryor, but he just has no place in this movie, in this universe. His character's completely pointless. Like, he's kind of the quote-unquote villain of the movie, but not really the villain because there's somebody behind him. And it's just not a very good movie. There's good sequences. I really like the Superman versus evil Superman fight sequence. That's really good. And I like Annette O'Toole a lot. Like, she's great. She was great in 48 Hours. And I thought that her and Christopher Reeves had some really good chemistry. Definitely a good replacement for Margot Kidder in the movie. A nice placeholder, I guess. I was a little disappointed she didn't go on to be in the fourth one, but there's some really goofy stuff in this. I ended up giving it a 3 out of 5. It's okay. It's not terrible. And the decline of this franchise continues with Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. But I'll say this. Okay, I'm not going to say too much about this movie. This is the Batman and Robin of the Superman franchise. But I'll say this. I think that the Superman franchise actually has 2 Batman and Robins, because I think that Superman 3 is just as bad as Superman 4 Quest for Peace. Like, and I think it's because this was so built up as just one of the worst superhero movies of all time. And I watched it and I was like, it's not good, but it's not the worst thing I've ever seen. It's fine. Like, Nuclear Man and Superman actually had a pretty cool fight on the moon at the end. And so I appreciated some of those more corny aspects of it, goofier aspects. And like I said, that really started in Superman 2. Even you can even say the first Superman where he twirls around the earth is kind of goofy and outlandish, and that kind of carries over. So the franchise always has that kind of tone there. It's just not as overt as it is in other installments and sequels. So, but Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, at least it brings back Gene Hackman, brings back Margot Kidder. It's short. It's only 90 minutes, so it's got that going for it. I didn't have to watch this for 2 hours and 7 minutes like I did Superman 3, so that it has that advantage. So I'll say, you know, it was okay. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. It's okay. Christopher Reeves is still great as the Man of Steel, and, you know, Gene Hackman's Gene Hackman. He kind of has the same tone as Lex Luthor throughout all the movies, really, to be honest. So, it's okay. It's the same as Superman 3. I don't think it's like the worst movie in the world, but at the end of the day, like when I'm thinking about this franchise, it's got a great movie, one of the best superhero movies ever made. It's got a really good superhero movie with Superman 2, and then it's got a couple of not so great, just mediocre, you know, superhero movies. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on the franchise. If I was going to rank it, honestly, I would put Superman 3 last, then Superman 4, then Superman 2, and then the first Superman is my number 1. But let's go ahead and talk about the actual 4K restorations of the movie. So the first Superman, like I said in the opening, is not a new restoration. That came out in 2018, and it's kind of known for not being great, not being a great restoration. So I don't know why Warner Brothers just didn't redo that one. But Superman 2, 3, 4, the Donner Cut are all brand new 4K restorations, native 4K restorations with Dolby Vision, HDR10, and I watched the first one first, loved the movie, but I noticed when I was watching, I was like, this is really not a great restoration. Like, it's super grainy, and usually I'm not, you know, I don't care too much about the grain, but it's grainy to the point that it almost feels like there's like a fog or cloud over the actual like picture of the movie, and you're watching it and you're like, why is it so foggy? And there's some sequences that look way better than others. But it just looked very foggy, and it's just not very well done. It's not cleaned up to the level that we're used to with good 4K restorations now. And again, this was 5 years ago, so I wish they would have redone it. The parts that stand out really stand out, like Superman's suit with the reds and the blues and the yellows. All that stuff looks great. Like when you're seeing him in contrast to the New York City skyline, it looks fantastic in those sequences. There are sequences that, again, like I said, look way better than others, that are just way more cleaned up and polished than others. And I think that the HDR does add a lot with the enhanced and rich colors, but there's not a lot of opportunities for that in this movie. Like, there's the Fortress of Solitude where you see Superman for the first time, his suit in contrast to the white background. All that stuff looks really good. But the movie, for the most part, takes place in a very dark and dreary New York City. So there's not a lot, like there is in the sequels, there's more opportunities for more settings that really kind of showcase that 4K in the HDR and the Dolby Vision. This is just a kind of dreary New York City skyline, the whole movie, and it doesn't really have an opportunity to showcase that stuff. So the first Superman on 4K doesn't look the best. I really wish they would have redid that, because when you get into Superman 2, a lot more cleaned up, a lot more polished. The HDR, there's a lot more different types of scenery in the second Superman movie. They go to a lot of different places, a lot of different locations, so you have that opportunity for showcase of the HDR and the Dolby Vision. And I thought that Superman 2 looked fantastic. Like when they actually get to the diner and you see the neon lights and all that stuff, looks great. The Fortress of Solitude probably looks the best that it does out of all the movies in this one. Like when you see Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor first go there, and his Miss Tess, I think is her name, Tessmacher maybe, and she's wearing that kind of red fur coat, and that contrast with the white ice background of the Fortress of Solitude, and Gene Hackman, Lex Luthor wearing that brown coat with the yellow shirt. All that stuff looks great. And then you have the kryptonite crystals that's like bright green and it's glowing off of the ice. looks fantastic. So Superman 2 looks really good on 4K. Getting into, and I'll just talk about these two together, and the Donner cut looks the same as Superman 2. It kind of looks like it's, you know, the same type of restoration. I didn't notice any differences in that one. But getting into Superman 3 and 4 real quick, these are both, and Superman 4 in particular, these are both easily the most polished and clean and crisp 4Ks of the bunch. They look the best. Which is very disappointing because they're the worst films of the franchise. So the worst films of this franchise look way better than Superman 1 and pretty good amount better than Superman 2. So if you like those movies, if you're a big fan of 3 and 4, you're going to be happy with the 4K transfers because the ones in 3 and 4 look great. Super polished, super clean, super crisp. A lot of great facial detail that, to be honest, like the first one was really lacking. Like I didn't notice like any of the detail in the faces and the outfits and stuff in the first one in comparison to the second and the third and the fourth. And they really take things to the next level. So I don't know if they had a different team working on 3 and 4, but those looked great, like just phenomenal 4K transfers. In particular, the fourth one, like when you see Nuclear Man come out, he looks great. Fantastic in 4K. So Superman 4 Quest for Peace looks awesome in 4K. So if you're a fan of those movies, they look great. Hands down the best restorations in this set. But it's just, I know that a lot of people are not big fans of those movies. So if you're buying this for the great Superman and Superman 2 4Ks, and I'm sure that there's some people that's going to buy this that never bought the Superman 4K. I never bought the Superman 4K. So you may not know that that is not a new restoration. That came out 5 years ago. So again, really, really think that Warner Brothers made a mistake not redoing that one for sure. Because like if Superman the movie looked like Superman 3 and 4, we're talking absolute recommendation for this box set because like that would just be fantastic to have those movies with a really great 4K transfer like 3 and 4. Now getting into the audio, all of these have Dolby Atmos. They have Dolby True HD 7.1, DTS HD Master Audio 5.1, DTS HD Master Audio 2.0. So you have all the bells and whistles and all of the different options when it comes to your audio. And I thought all of these sounded great. Now I'm just listening to these on a soundbar with a subwoofer that has the capability to simulate the Dolby Atmos. So I don't have that full setup, but like when I first popped in Superman the movie and those opening credits that are just, the credits are just kind of whooshing by you, like that was easily the best sound of experience of like all the movies. Like you just felt that as the credits were like flying towards you, like I could just hear it like go behind me, the sound just kind of reverberating off the wall. So the opening credits sequences, I hate to say it, it's kind of the best showcase of that Dolby Atmos in the first Superman movie. And the second one, I believe, does it as well. So, but everything across the board, like not taking anything away from the rest of the movies themselves, everything sounded great. I had no issues with the sound whatsoever. And I mean, John Williams' score, which he didn't do the score for every single one of these movies, but they do have the theme in every single movie. It's different people doing the score though. But John Williams' score is so great in all these movies. And everything just sounded great and wonderful. So getting into the special features, a lot of great special features on all these, but it's nothing new. Like all this stuff was present in the, the Blu-ray releases from back in the day. But again, guys, I'll always say, and I'll keep saying, I'll keep criticizing studios. This is the 45th anniversary of the Superman movie franchise. Add something new. Damn it. Give me something new here. Obviously, we can't get Christopher Reeves. We can't get Margot Kidder talking about these movies. But you can, and not Gene Hackman either because he's retired. But you could get somebody talking about these films, some kind of like retrospective on the Superman films. Like superhero movies are so big now. Like why, there's no way you can't get somebody to come back and talk about these movies. New commentary, new something, like just do something new. It's an anniversary edition, for Christ's sake. Do something new in terms of special features. But the special features that are here are all great special features. And again, they've been on previous releases. So if you didn't get a chance to check those out, you can check them out with this release. And getting into the packaging, again, I'll complain a little bit here. It's a nice box set. I like the way that it looks, but it's a very, very flimsy box set. Like right there, guys, it's kind of, you can see where it's a little dented at the top already. So it's not great quality in terms of, you know, the box set. And for the price here, I'll get into that a little bit. This is $89.99 currently, so it actually went down a little bit, $5 in price since yesterday. And again, this comes out today. I'll link it down below in the description. But for that kind of money to have this flimsy of a box set, I mean, like Warner Brothers, the studios, like, and I'm not counting, like Sony does great work with box sets and stuff. Like I'm not asking for like Vinegar Syndrome level packaging or something like that, but do something like Sony does with the Underworld box set or the Resident Evil. It's a nice, like solid material that they're using for their packaging, and it just makes for a nicer box set. I don't even need slip covers for all these, but just some kind of like nice packaging and box set for this with better quality. Like, you know, something like what Lionsgate does or Sony, like they're really good at doing that kind of stuff. Even Paramount's done some good box sets, like the Paranormal Activity, like something like that. Just this is like almost paper thin. It's almost paper thin, so it's just not great quality of packaging. But you know, you have all the 4K cases. You do get a digital code. You get the 4Ks and the Blu-rays in this set, so it's not just 4Ks like the Rocky set was. And at the end of the day, like I'm happy to have the individual cases and the, you know, the little box set to put them in. Like at least it has that. It didn't do what Rocky did and just put them all in this really like thin package release. I still think that that's crap as well. But at the end of the day, look, I'm gonna give my final thoughts. I'm gonna break this down. Is this worth the price of admission? Is what everybody wants to know, I'm sure. $89.99 for this box set. And the best movie in this set doesn't have the greatest 4K transfer. The second best movie in this set looks really good, but it's not the best 4K I've ever seen. And two of the, I'm not going to say worst, but two of the most mediocre superhero movies of all time have some of the best 4K transfers that I've ever seen. Good special features. I would say, look, if you don't own these movies at all, it's a tough sell, guys. It really is a tough sell because this is $90. And I can almost guarantee you in 2 or 3 weeks, this is going to go down to $70. It's going to go down to $65. So I would say wait. I would say wait. And it just comes down to your enjoyment level. And are you a massive Superman fan? Do you like Superman 3 and Superman 4? It just really comes down to that. But it is kind of disappointing that the first one just doesn't look that great. And there's no new special features. I don't think the packaging's all that to write home to mom about. So I can't, at the end of the day, give this a solid recommendation. I think it's a good release, but for the price, like that's where I'm really struggling. Like if this was $60, I could recommend it, no problem. I think it's worth $60. I think it's worth $70. But when you get to 90, it's just a tough sell, especially for the movies that are in this set. So yeah, that's my thoughts though, guys. I appreciate y'all watching. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. If you haven't already, turn on those bell notifications for all future videos and follow me on all my social media accounts. Those links are down below in the description, and we'll see you next time.